Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on my African night crawlers that live in these yellow buckets. Besides the one over here, there's another one off camera, off to the side. We'll slide that one in when time comes to feed that one. This is bucket number one. Bucket number two is the other one that we're feeding. Really quick before I get my hands soiled, I wanted to show you what's going on with these bins. It was 11 days ago that we last checked in on these bins, at which point they had reached 6 months of age. And at that time, they received feedings number 18 and number 14. And number 18 went into bin number 1 here, or bucket number 1. Feeding number 14 into bucket number 2. And I kind of sized up that last feeding as being not a great deal of food. You can kind of see what I'm doing over here. It's a little deviation from what I often do, which is just to take the frozen foods that I've got for them. In this case, today it's pumpkin. I usually just take that stuff and chuck it in, maybe add a little bit of bedding, but I've had this big pile of coffee filters stacking up. As you can see, I got a whole bunch of them here still. But I figured this would be a good way to make use of some of these productively by creating little food bundles for these little guys. So I figured I would take the pumpkin and create little burrito wraps or little food bundles over here for them. And since we got 2 buckets to feed, I figured 3 little food bundles per bucket. I've even got a couple additional chunks of pumpkin here that didn't really make it into a food bundle. And I've also, besides the pumpkin, got my pulverized eggshell here as grit for them, and even some coffee off on the side. So we're gonna have to feed these guys. So let's get the camera into position. We can commence with the feeding. So 11 days ago, we came in here with a little bit of a mix, a variety of different foods. There was banana peel and potato peel and strawberry, cucumber, a variety of different things. And when we came in here to feed them those things, which like I said earlier was not a huge amount, we did bump into the leftovers of the previous feeding, which had been exclusively orange peel. And the worms were just going bananas for that orange peel. They were just all over that stuff. But there was a good bit of it remaining as leftovers. And we did have a good little worm spotting or two during the last check-in as they were encountered, enjoying the leftovers of the orange peel that they got previously. And I mean, just based on the turnout that orange peel had generated, it did make me wonder whether we would bump into leftovers of the stuff. And it does seem to me like that's what we're encountering here already. A little bit of leftover orange peel. There was a tangerine also. It was mostly orange peel, but each bin was given a half of a spoiled tangerine. And I think we even encountered half of the tangerine in bucket number 1 when we were feeding over there. And I can still see leftovers of the orange peel popping up here and there, and I can even sense the scent of it. There's a nice orangey scent in here. And you can see there's a whole lot of worms hanging out down here in the feeding area, which is always fun to see. During the past few check-ins, we had made an effort to try to help dry the material in these systems by adding dry bedding, and that was part of my motivation for selecting the bedding of choice that we came up with today. Those dry coffee filters seem that perhaps by coming in here dry might also aid in the absorption of what appears to be, to me at least, a little bit excess moisture in here. I did want to excavate a pretty good sized hole into which we can plop in today's feeding, because these little food bundles do seem like they're going to take up a little bit of space. So I want to make sure we excavate far enough that we can submerge them completely. The one observation I've had in the past was that when the systems are seemingly overly damp, I am able to stack the material up in this way without it crumbling and avalanching down into the pit. And this, again, might be a telltale to the fact that maybe we're dealing with perhaps a little bit more moisture in here than is necessary. The amount of stuff that adheres to my glove is often also a clue. So why don't we come in here with this little care package that we assembled for them earlier. These little bits of pumpkin wraps. And I've also got my coffee here, which has been stacking up considerably, so I figured I would use this as an opportunity to try to liquidate some inventory. A lot of times I'll sprinkle in worm chow to dress up the coffee. In this case, I'm just coming in with something similar, but not worm chow. This is the pulverized eggshell that I use as grit in my worm bin feedings, and then I think we could start returning the leftovers we bumped into last time. The one thing I didn't really notice leftovers of, which we saw in great amounts last time, was the leftovers of napkins and paper products that had been put in here as supplementary bedding dry. But we made an attempt each time to try to fragment each of those pieces of paper that we found while checking in last time, and perhaps that helped a little bit in the breakdown of that material. Here's another little chunk of orange peel we should probably submerge below the surface. And maybe we could take a little peek over on this side too, since we did excavate over on the opposite side, and see what was going on over there. Here too, I'm sensing a little bit of what might be more moisture than is needed down in here. But I definitely like the way things are looking in these buckets. The worms definitely seem like they're quite content to be in here, and there's just so many of them. Nice population in this bucket. And both systems are very similar to one another, so I'm assuming that when we get over into bucket number 2, we're going to see something similar. So let's head over there now. Just going to slide over these little food bundles and my coffee so that I can make space for bucket number 2 and slide it in underneath the camera so we can get to work over here as well. Let's see here. With the exception of the discrepancy in feedings, these systems have been getting managed very similarly to each other for quite some time now. It was in the very beginning that we made the decision to run this bucket as a set it and forget it test for 7 weeks. So for 49 days, we didn't even touch bucket number 2 over here, other than lift up the bubble wrap, peek underneath, just to make sure nothing was going haywire, and then covered it right back up and didn't touch it beyond that. And then after those 49 days had elapsed, we had reached day 100, at which point we ended the set it and forget it test. But I mean, that was over 3 months ago at this point. So ever since then, we've been back to the routine of treating both systems very similarly to each other. But this system is still 4 feedings behind the other one, although that's not really an accurate statement, because we did load this system up with enough leafy matter, damp leafy matter, to pretty much top it off, whereas the other system was provided that roughly about that same amount of material over that course of the 7 weeks. When we were not checking in here, we were gradually attempting to apply a similar amount of leafy material, bedding material into here, over into bucket number 1, so that at the end of the set it and forget it test, we could kind of feel like we've applied a similar quantity of material into both systems. I remember this piece of white material. I had picked it up and examined it and was checking it out, and it seemed so weird that it had this really bright color. Kind of made me wonder if it was a material that was even going to break down in the worm bins, but it does seem to me like it's just some sort of paper. I'm not sure why it's eluding the breakdown process, or even kind of not soaking in any of the moisture and darkness, the color of the surrounding materials. Hopefully it's not some sort of a weird synthetic material that's not going to break down. Well, if it continues to look that way in the coming check-ins, then maybe we'll simply extract it and get it out of here. But I keep hoping that it's just something that's going to get broken down just like everything else in the bins or in the buckets. So here too, I'm kind of getting the sense like we're able to stack the material up pretty good without it wanting to crumble under its own weight. So here too, perhaps we're dealing with a little bit more moisture than is absolutely necessary, but that's fine. I have no objection to just leaving it as is, because these systems are going to be around for a little while longer. The last time I ran these yellow buckets, I emptied them after 6 months and placed the contents of them as is right into my Vermibag Mini. A lot of times after 6 months you would want to just harvest the castings that had accumulated over that amount of time, but in the case of that last harvest of red wigglers from these yellow buckets, we had used all the material as is to populate my Vermibag Mini, and that means my Vermibag Mini already has a whole bunch of really nice finished material down in the lower reaches of it. So here with these buckets, I'm not quite sure how we're going to proceed to getting the castings separated from the worms and moving the worms onto new locations. But at, you know, an age that's already approaching 200 days, it is probably something I should take into consideration and start pondering to figure out what I want to do with these little guys. I do assume that at some point I'll probably just be emptying the contents of these buckets into containers in which I can manage separation of the worms from their castings and other things a little bit more easily than in here in the buckets, because working in these buckets is a little bit tricky, but it's okay. It's a little deviation from what I'm normally doing around here. So I got a few things I got to take care of getting cleaned up and put away. I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.